very good evening to the August gathering. After what has been stated by the leader of the opposition, I would like to reinstate. After a particular point of development, growth becomes stagnant and development stops. The West consists of hardcore developed economies, and on the contrary, African Union consists of developing economies. So, to bring the African nations at par or improving their basic level of sustenance, I'll start again. Yeah. After a particular point of development, growth becomes stagnant and development stops. The West consists of hardcore and developed economies, and African continent on the contrary consists of developing economies. So to bring the African nations at par with the Western economy or to improve their basic level of sustenance drastically, the West is providing special support which does not amount to eating the African pie, but holistic development. As the leader of the proposition and the deputy leader of the proposition think that it is a mode by which the African nations become dependent on the Western nations, I would like to bring to the notice of the August gathering, the whole idea of funding the African nations is trade, but is trade and not aid. Following this, I would like, under the social perspectives, I would like to bring to the notice the prima facie evident facts that there is low literacy rate, low infant mortality rate, low standard of living, armed conflicts in most of the nations of Africa, economic backwardness, drug addiction, lack of public welfare, economic backwardness is also stated by the member of the proposition team. In light of this, there are programs like the Global Health Initiative, which efforts to engage, improve partnership, to enable, to plan, coordinate and manage health strategies, to bring in operational research, to identify new health strategies in the African nations, integrating technical support and monitoring evidence-based research which is focused on health and gender issues. Yes, take it.
Could you please cite one example of such a healthcare policy?
I am explaining the Global Health Initiative which is taken up by the USA in the African Union nations. I will also name the nations where the program is active. Further. Then there is the program under USAID, Feed the Future. This is US's Global Hunger and Food Security Initiative, which supports country-driven approaches to uproot hunger and chronic food insecurity and forge long-term solutions to against food insecurity and malnutrition. This initiative also transforms their agriculture sector to sustainably grow enough food so that they can feed their people. This, ladies and gentlemen, promotes the principle of self-reliance in the African nations. These two programs are working actively in the countries of Mali, Senegal, Liberia, Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, Mozambique, Namibia, Zimbabwe and Zambia. Then there is the United States African Development Fund, which is the federal agency established to provide grants of up to $250,000 directly to the marginalized communities, groups and enterprise of African nations. The basic objectives of this fund is to program activities in marginalized communities and support and give them equal opportunities, and also invest in African ideas through participatory development. And similarly, there is a Dutch government program which is funding the MDG 3, which is the Development Goals 3 fund, which is implemented in Democratic Republic of Congo, Burundi, Kenya and Uganda and Tanzania for cultural changes and practices on sexual and gender-based violence, strengthening mechanisms of justice, conducting national studies and regional synthesis, and also sensitizing and collaborating with the police, army and judiciary. Furthermore, since agriculture is the backbone of Africa, there is replacement of rules of WTO to bring in a new concept, that is Economic Partnership Agreement between EU and Africa, that is European Union and Africa, the purpose of which will be explained by the member of opposition. Then in today's, I would like to summarize by saying, in today's modern day and age of democracy, awareness and mass public uprising. It's impossible. It's impossible for the West to even think of eating the African pie. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, respected educators, my dear fellow debaters. It's a matter of great pride for me to represent the government, and before we move forward in the debate, I would like to bring out the contradictions and a few rebuttals. Sir, there have been gross factual errors which have been presented by the proposition during the whole debate. Firstly, sir, Ramco and Shell are all private companies, they are not government-to-government trade agreement. Sir, the second thing is, sir, what is the particular point of development, sir? They said that they are playing Good Samaritan, but during my points I proved that they are not playing Good Samaritan. They are just playing good boys, go to Africa, plunder them, come back as bad boys, ma'am. Ma'am, to begin with the points, we believe that facts speak better than normal words. So, ma'am, we'd like to start with facts. Ma'am, the plunder of Africa began in the 19th century itself, when the European countries went to Africa and divided it in right angles among themselves. So, Portugal took one part, England took a right angle, and other countries took a right angle. Ma'am, this moved on to the next part when oil came into the scene. And the fact is that of all FDI which Africa receives, 50% of FDI goes to oil, which means that you pay for your oil, you do not pay for development. Please, sir, you point.
For the extraction of oil from down below, you need expertise in pipelines and systems which are only existing in companies that are actually owned by the Western countries. How can you do away with them for apparent protection of your consumption, exploitation and plunder?
So thank you. You took 15 minutes, more than 15 seconds of my time. But since the question is very important, I'd like to state that, ma'am, they say that they bring in the technology and all those things. But I'll give you normal statistics, ma'am. The countries which, there are 3 countries of which I'm giving examples. They are Algeria, Chad and Congo. Now, ma'am, what happened is these are the countries where they pumped in the investment, ma'am. But what is seen that the other African countries progressed much faster than them in spite of the modern technology which they say that they will bring, ma'am. Ma'am, now I'd like to go to the next part, ma'am. Military follows oil, ma'am. Military follows oil. Once you want the oil, you send in the military to capture the oil. And they're giving good examples which they stated are Afghanistan and Iraq, ma'am. But let me point out that Afghanistan and Afghanistan war was taken in a decision taken in Haas, and then Iraq, the country where oil is present, they went in without a Security Council resolution, ma'am. Ma'am, the fact that the scramble for African development has brought in corruption, environmental degradation and internal dissent is shown in the UN Corruption Index, ma'am. Then, ma'am, if you move on to the next part, ma'am, we see that South Sudan is a country which is recently formed, ma'am, but see the type of impact they have got, that 95% of foreign investment which went in this semester to Africa went to South Sudan because they wanted to develop the oil, ma'am. Ma'am, Africa also has no middle class, ma'am. No middle class means no consuming class, ma'am, which means you're developing a hollow economy, ma'am. Ma'am, then you move to the next one, which is, yes, ma'am.
I would like to, there is a National Guard program which is under Barack Obama's regime that is going on for cooperation between US's and African nations. Which is regarding the military program. What is your say on that?
Ma'am, that's what I'm saying. They bring in military to take in the people. They have proved their own point, ma'am. Next one is called the dust disease syndrome. This is what I'm saying. Dust disease syndrome is the fact where once the oil goes out from the country, the development goes out. This is referred to because there was an area in Netherlands when oil was once discovered, it was a good area. After the oil went, everything went. Then there is the point of biopiracy, ma'am. The fact of biopiracy is that once the biological resources of Africa are also now being taken away from the people, ma'am. Now the drugs of Africa, the local plants of Africa are being patented, ma'am. Then there is the African drug market, ma'am. The Western economies, many of the Western economies have not taken adequate measures to prevent drugs from flowing into Africa, ma'am. Then there is, ma'am, oil and gas in Africa, ma'am. That 90% of all foreign direct investment in Africa comes only to oil and gas. Why not for development purposes, ma'am? Now I like to quote a development fact which is published in their own book, which is called the CIA World Fact Book, ma'am. CIA World Fact Book said that African debt stands at 300 billion, ma'am. Why have they not taken steps to remove the debt if they're so concerned for the continent? Right now, ma'am, I'd like to move to another factor, ma'am. African resources, 24% of all exports are resources only. They are not finished goods. With that, I'd like to rest my case. Thank you, sir.
Before we go ahead, any point of orders?
Oh, ma'am, ma'am. 3 points of order, ma'am. Firstly, a question was asked in the protected minute. A point of information was inquired in protected minute, at the last protected minute. There were 2 questions which are more than 15 seconds in length, which severely wasted my time, ma'am.
How can the speakers speak and count time together at the same time and say it's more than 15 seconds? I really doubt it.
Sir, I'm counting.
You?
So we will depend on him, and he's making a complete list of every time that you people are taking. So you're welcome to look at the sheet eventually. Very welcome, ma'am.
Good evening, all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, before I present to you what the case has been basically presented to you, what we have focused upon, what the leader of the opposition, what the leader of the proposition has presented to you, I first of all rebut a very important point that has been presented to you by the leader of the proposition. Ladies and gentlemen, the leader of the proposition mentioned that Africa is a poor country, Africa is being exploited. Ladies and gentlemen, the fact of the matter is that this poverty, it is not attributable to the West first of all. So because Africa is poor, we cannot attribute to the West, so this constructive falls on its face. Ladies and gentlemen, the fact of the matter is the statistics say that about $500 million have been spent, they have been given as aid to Africa over the last 50 years, first of all. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to present to you what the case essentially has been till now. The leader of the proposition came and proposed a motion to be the systematic exploitation regime of the West. It will plunder Africa. While the leader of the opposition proposed the definition to be that the West will not eat the African pie. The West does not intend to eat the African pie. The West does not require to eat the African pie. And for this, ladies and gentlemen, the very important constructive which was put forward by the deputy leader of the opposition was the constructive of trade and not aid, ladies and gentlemen. So when the deputy leader of proposition presented the constructive of help, that from whom Africa needs help, this constructive falls because the West is not providing help or aid to Africa. The West wants to promote trade in Africa, ladies and gentlemen. And moreover, this point can be summarized from the memorable description as was provided by Mr. Tony Blair. Quote, the plight in Africa is a scar on the conscience of the world, ladies and gentlemen, and that is why the constructive hegemony that has been propagated by the proposition here falls on its face because it is not applicable in this scenario. Because, ladies and gentlemen, there is a presence of specialized laws, specialized treaties in this context, and for example, the Sub-Saharan Africa document mentioned, it is one of the treaty, one of the laws mentioned that the word aid, it has the word aid only once, which is not worthy. Ladies and gentlemen, it has trade wise 20 times in the strategy. That is prima facie evidence in itself, ladies and gentlemen, that we intend to promote trade, not give aid. Ladies and gentlemen, second of all, when the proposition defined the West to be good Samaritans, how the point of this matter is that West is not trying to be a saint here. It is a principle of reciprocity, ladies and gentlemen. We are focusing on holistic development, reciprocity, mutual trade, efficient utilization of resources, and peaceful existence, ladies and gentlemen. For example, Saudi Arabia provides oil.
On the issue of blood diamond in Sierra Leone, ma'am.
Excuse me?
Blood diamond in Sierra Leone.
Yes, there are incidences like that, but we need to focus, we need to have a regime, we need to have specialized laws for that. That is why the West wants to include not only putting an end to this black diamond supply, but also these drugs and narcotics have been proposed by, which have been pointed out by the proposition here. So my example, ladies and gentlemen, was Saudi Arabia is providing oil to the West and the West is providing them infrastructure. The West did not eat the Saudi Arabian pie, but the West provided them infrastructure, they gave them oil. So this is not a host and a pest relationship, ladies and gentlemen. This is symbiotic existence. Furthermore, ladies and gentlemen, the proposition gave the example of other countries progressing, Congo not progressing. But ladies and gentlemen, I would like to, summarizing my point, I would like to give the example of Sierra Leone partnership, which is guided by the principles and objective laid down from 13 million in 2005 to 27 million
billion in 2009. The progress has been in the agriculture sector, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
I said 1, 2, and then it's it.
That's right. Take it.